So unlike Jimmy Butler, I'm actually playing hurt today. I pulled an old man move. I was leaning over to pick something up and threw my back out. Hence, I'm actually sitting down at my desk doing today's podcast. That being said, good old Jimmy Butler is up to it again, isn't he? He went ahead and he missed the team playing. You can't write this stuff. He's been suspended by the Miami Heat once again. This time it's for 2 games. Apparently Butler actually said he'd meet the team there, that they're actually being in Milwaukee for their next game on Thursday night. I have to say, this whole Jimmy Butler saga is absolutely ridiculous when you think about it. And the nerve of the Miami Heat organization to actually think they can get away with jerseys that still say Heat culture on them.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever...
Welcome back to the NBA Rundown. On today's show, we're going to talk about Jimmy Butler, Pat Riley, the Phoenix Suns, and those Miami Heat culture jerseys as well. I've got all of that, and trust me, a whole lot more coming up on today's big show. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I am playing a little bit hurt today. If I was in the NBA, I would still attempt to play. That being said, back injuries are not fun, and if you've ever had one, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, in terms of Jimmy Butler and his request to actually be traded by the Miami Heat, I think actually happened a considerable amount of time ago. I'm talking about during the offseason. But the Miami Heat decided to hold their ground, which is a typical move if you know anything at all about Pat Riley. That being said, it is as clear as water is wet at this point that Jimmy Butler absolutely needs to be moved. And I have to say, on a personal note, I'm so sick of seeing the Shams reports about Jimmy Butler this, Jimmy Butler that, Jimmy Butler this, the Phoenix Suns did this, so that they could possibly make a move to actually go out and get Jimmy Butler. Now, there are a wide variety of trade scenarios that suddenly make things a little bit more possible for the Phoenix Suns to actually pull off a deal to bring Jimmy Butler to the Valley of the Sun. We're going to talk a little bit about that right now, and then we'll get back to some of the semantics around Pat Riley, the Miami culture jerseys, and Jimmy Butler himself. Now, the Phoenix Suns went ahead and made a move the other day, a move in which it basically allowed them to get 3 first-round draft picks in exchange for a 2031 draft pick with the Utah Jazz. Danny Ainge is at it again. He's sitting there with his magic 8-ball asking it, what should I do? And Danny said, yes, I know on paper it seems like a bad move, but the reality is the number 1 draft picks that he gave up were for 25, 27, and 29. And if you look at least at the 25 and the 27 ones, they're for the Cleveland or the Minnesota Timberwolves pick. And we know how well the Cleveland Cavaliers are playing at this point. So, in other words, they were low first-round draft picks. They were, if you will, 28 to 30 in terms of where those draft picks were going to land. Essentially, they're high second-round draft picks. A brilliant move, quite frankly, if you ask me, by one Danny Ainge, when you can sort of consider where the Utah Jazz are today, what that Utah Jazz game plan is probably really like, and what they were able to get out of the Phoenix Suns, who, as we all know, are officially locked away in salary cap hell. So for the Phoenix Suns, now they've got a little bit more ammunition to play with. And one of the thoughts has been that Bradley Beal would say he was okay with a trade to the Milwaukee Bucks. So Bradley Beal goes to the Milwaukee Bucks. The Miami Heat then get Bobby Portis and a couple other pieces and a draft pick. And the Milwaukee Bucks get a draft pick or two as well. Jimmy Butler ends up in Phoenix. Now, that's one of these scenarios. And of course, there's some other pieces, some other players that would have to be involved in this to all make this salary cap actually make sense and work for everybody. So that appears to be the direction, and that also appears to be the number one spot where Jimmy Butler is most likely going to land if you're reading the tea leaves of the Phoenix Suns organization and what they've done. And if you're looking at what Pat Riley did today with that 2-game suspension of Jimmy Butler, I suspect that either by the time you watch this video or 24 to 48 hours after you watch this video, Jimmy Butler will be traded finally away from the Miami Heat. Now, I kid the Miami Heat about all their Miami Heat culture stuff. And when you think about the Heat culture and what does it really mean? Well, ultimately, it means you've got a bunch of players that generally are willing to take a little bit less and are willing to do whatever it takes to actually win. It's a grittiness amongst those players that make up the Miami culture. And Jimmy Butler was certainly a key component of that. Like, do you think of the Miami Heat culture will exist when Jimmy Butler leaves? Will they be able to bring in other gritty players like Jimmy Butler that will actually fit that very definition of that Miami Heat culture? It's a good question. I'm not sure I actually have the answer. I do know that I do like Bobby Portis a lot. I'm not saying Bobby Portis is a complete replacement for a Jimmy Butler, but he is a gritty player, and his playing time in Milwaukee has been shrinking a little bit so far this season. I think it's a great fit there. Once again, there'll be a couple other players as part of a deal. At the end of the day, if you're the Miami Heat, look, you want to end up in a world where you're not suspending Jimmy Butler every other week. You want to end up in a world where your team can actually concentrate on what your team's trying to concentrate on. Look, they're currently 21-21. They still have a legitimate chance to, at the very least, make the play-in this year. And I think from a culture perspective, it is very clear that the sooner they get rid of Jimmy Butler, the better off this Miami Heat organization will be. I just don't understand what Pat Riley and the Miami Heat organization was expecting. Now, if you look at Jimmy Butler's track record, of course he was going to turn into a malcontent. Of course, Jimmy Butler was going to cause problems on his way out the door. Look, if you called up any of his references, like if you got your Jimmy Butler resume and he did great in an interview process, and if you had to do some reference checks, you dig a little bit into those reference checks to understand more about that particular employee. In this particular case, how did Jimmy handle leaving that particular company and or basketball organization? And quite frankly, it has never been a smooth ride. Now, it's one thing to bring Jimmy Butler onto your team. It's a whole other thing to expect a Jimmy Butler exit to actually go smoothly, because it never has before. So when you look at where we're at today, the Phoenix Suns are clearly making some moves to actually make it possible for them to actually acquire Jimmy Butler. I guarantee they're talking to Bradley Beal and Bradley Beal's agent and have convinced Bradley Beal that it's time for him to move on, despite the fact that Bradley Beal has a no trade clause. On the Jimmy Butler side, I'm sure the Miami Heat would love nothing more than to not trade Jimmy Butler, the malcontent, to the Phoenix Suns at this point. But when you look at the other offers that haven't been made for Jimmy Butler at this point, and you look around the rest of the NBA, and yes, the Los Angeles Lakers name always pops up, and yes, the Golden State Warriors name has popped up numerous times as well. Specifically with the Golden State Warriors, they simply just do not have enough cap space, and they'd have to give up way too much of their youth to bring in Jimmy Butler as a part-time player. And I think at the end of the day, the ship is already sailing on their particular season. Now, the Los Angeles Lakers, on the other hand, want to get better. LeBron James and AD at this point absolutely believe that they are a player or two away. Now, whether or not they're willing to package enough players and a couple draft picks to actually make that happen is hard to say. I mean, they'd have to really move a lot of things to make it happen. And if they were going to actually make a legitimate move for Jimmy Butler, I would have imagined it would have happened before they traded away D'Angelo Russell. So I think ultimately the one landing spot, the one place where Phoenix is actually going to be able to get the most out of what is a defunct, if you will, asset in one Jimmy Butler is the Phoenix Suns at this point. And yes, Pat Riley is clearly dragging his feet on this, but I think the time has come for the Miami Heat organization as a whole to jump in and say, trade Jimmy Butler already. All right, I'd love to know what your thoughts and opinions are for the NBA rundown. I am playing hurt today. I'm Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.